I've long felt a bit like a fish out of water in the youth ministry world. And so that can be hard. And it can be really lonely. And so I started this website to help maybe some theology nerds who have graduated from seminary, who are doing youth ministry now, and who want to teach theologically.
Welcome to another Prepared to Answer podcast. My name is Sean Walker. I'm joined by Scott Steen as always. How are you, Scott?
Good, Sean. Good to be back this morning.
Yeah, and we have a guest with us today, Mike McGarry from Youth Pastor Theologian. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Scott, I'm not going to lie, I've been looking forward to this episode. We've just come off of a series that was kind of heavy, cancel culture, dealing with a lot of deep, tough topics, which is good. And we'd encourage our listeners to go back and listen to that series. So I'm excited to introduce Mike for that reason, that it's not quite as a heavy topic, but also...
it's a bit of today's a bit of a breather.
Yeah.
A bit of breather, something a little more lighthearted, something a little, some celebratory discussion, and we're excited to introduce Mike, so a little nice break.
For sure, and that's another reason. We're celebrating the Lord's goodness to Prepare to Answer, and for Youth Pastor Theologian, and we're so excited to introduce Mike to the Prepare to Answer audience, and also to YPT audience and a potential YPT audience. Really, we're really excited. So, welcome, Mike. And you know what? Instead of me kind of going through all your credentials and all that kind of stuff, we thought we'd maybe start off with you kind of telling us a little bit about yourself. So, kind of where did you grow up? Where are you from? How did you get into ministry?
All right. Well, I was born on May 5th, 1980 in Brockton, Massachusetts. It was a beautiful sunny day. Just kidding.
I remember that day.
Going way back. So I'm a youth pastor over in about half an hour south of Boston. So if you know where Boston, Massachusetts is, and if you know anything about where Providence, Rhode Island is, if you threw a dart right between Boston and Providence, you would probably hit me. So that's my home. That's where I've grown up. That's where the bulk of my ministry has happened.
Sure.
I've been a youth pastor for almost 18 years. And when I was a teenager, my youth pastor made a huge impact on my life. When my parents got divorced when I was in middle school, grew up in church, and it was pretty devastating. And my youth pastor just had a really significant impact on my life. I was a quiet kid with a stutter who had a really hard time talking in front of people without turning beet red, and just painfully shy. And when I told my youth pastor that I wanted to go to college to study youth ministry, he was like, yeah, okay, wonderful, great. And then years later, I talked with him after I'd been a youth pastor for about a decade.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to lie, Mike, when you told me that, I just did not see it.
Okay.
He's like, I did not see it. But I thought Mike wouldn't come up with this just because it would be so natural for him. So clear, the Lord is doing something, and I'm not going to get in the way.
Wow.
And that's just kind of part of my story. And
you felt a calling fairly early on then. You're saying as a teenager?
Yeah, I was a teenager. I was probably about 16 when I felt a prompting. And for me, really, it was just, I couldn't speak in front of groups of people unless I was teaching the Bible. And my youth pastor gave me opportunities to teach the Bible at youth group. And I helped start a Bible study in high school. And if you know anything about Massachusetts, it is not the Bible Belt. It is very much more like the Canadian context of post-Christian. So there was some opposition to that and some challenge to that. But when I was teaching scripture, I could just talk because it wasn't about me. It was about God's word. And so that really is my heart in ministry, is to just open up God's word with students. And it's not, hey, let me be engaging and fun and cool and clever or anything. But it's just to lead students to God's word and to talk about who he is in my ministry context in New England, being a Christian really costs you something. So let's give our students a faith that's big enough for them to grow into instead of a teenage-sized faith that they're going to grow out of. And so that's just kind of how I've approached the student ministry. And so started Youth Pastor Theologian, and more, I think as post-Christian contexts spread and grow deeper, it just seems to be resonating with the role of theology and youth ministry, and got my doctor of ministry from Gordon Conwell Seminary under the supervision of Walt Mueller and Duffy Robbins and Adonis Vidu. Yeah, I've written a few youth ministry books and spoken, a bit here and there. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity to serve and resource youth workers through Youth Pastor Theologian.
So 18 years in youth ministry, and currently, as we're taping, you're still ministering as a youth pastor. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep. I'm currently the youth pastor at South Shore Baptist Church in Hingham, Massachusetts, which is right on the ocean. I'm still full-time there for the next few weeks before I drop down to part-time, and I'll be rolling off staff fully at the end of the summer. I should also mention I am married and have 2 kids.
Oh, you did that kind of in there.
Oh boy, are you going to pay for this?
I'm so smooth. Tracy and I went to high school together, actually, and that's a long story. So Tracy is also a public educator, so she oversees the special education program for the middle school, the public middle school in town. Neither of us go to work. I go to church and she goes to school every day. And we're both very much involved and committed to reaching the next generation and serving them. We have 2 kids. So Matt is a freshman. He's in 9th grade. And Hannah is in middle school in 6th grade. And so I've been youth pastor dad, and we have just some really wonderful kids and an amazing family. So thankful for them.
That's wonderful. Well, maybe before we jump into Youth Pastor Theologian, so we kind of want to get some background, kind of where you've been led, but you run a podcast regularly, on Youth Pastor Theologian. And what I like on your podcast is you will ask your guest questions.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mostly around when they were teenagers.
You didn't tell me this was coming.
No, I know. So it's best right off the top of your head. So if we went back to Mike McGarry when he was a teenager, so you'll do this with your guests, right?
I do. Yep.
Yes. And so let's go back to Mike McGarry in high school. What is Mike putting in his Walkman or his Discman or Ghetto Blaster?
Okay. All right. You're going to love this, actually. So true confession time. This is something that I've actually been meaning to talk to you guys about because of where you're located.
Okay.
The greatest band in music history is Rush.
Wow.
Okay. I love Rush. I listen to Rush still probably multiple times a week. And my wife still cannot stand Geddy Lee's voice, but that's fine. That's never stopped me.
Nice.
I love Rush. In high school, especially, I love Metallica. Van Halen, U2.
That is such a great window into the 1980s. Wow.
That is still my go-to playlist right there. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. No, that's great. And I would resonate with some of those names too. They would be on my my mixtapes when we did mixtapes.
Mixtapes, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then the
so much work.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd always miss the first few minutes of the first few seconds of the song because you have to listen.
Yeah, exactly. And the 90 and the tape to tape reels and the Ghetto Blasters. All that kind of stuff. So great. Okay, those are some names that resonate with me.
Yep.
So maybe we can spend some time on Youth Pastor Theologian. So Mike, you're in youth ministry. God has called you to it. You've gone through, you've got some schooling on it, and you've got a real passion for theology and youth. When does Youth Pastor Theologian kind of start formulating? When does the Lord start kind of laying this on your heart?
That's a hard question because I've been a youth pastor for a long time.
Yeah.
I've long felt a bit like a fish out of water in the youth ministry world. Being a theologically minded youth worker sometimes means that you ask uncomfortable questions that people don't always appreciate. Sometimes you can get a reputation for being not difficult, but just like, okay, there's Mike doing his Mike thing again. And so that can be hard. And it can be really lonely because a lot of theologically minded ministries and organizations really don't pay much attention to youth ministry. And so you're always translating, from this conference or that resource or this seminar into a youth ministry context. And a lot of times I go to these things and I was pretty much like the only youth pastor there. Then when I was around youth workers with a very like-minded heart and passion and commitment to students, sometimes it was just like, that's not really what the gospel is. And I'm not sure that's really a faithful way of disciple making. And should we be doing this or should we be doing that? Right. So it's this weird in-between zone. And so just kind of learning over the last number of years to embrace that instead of resenting it or feeling insecure about it. And then a number of years ago, I was introduced to the Rooted ministry, which is focused on advancing gospel-centered youth ministry, and made some really wonderful friends who honestly are just among my best friends in this world, who I met through Rooted, and realizing that I'm not alone. I'm not the only I'm not the only theology nerd in youth ministry. And then I'd been writing about theology and youth ministry for a number of years before Rooted. When I was with Rooted, that's a lot of what I did there. And then the Lord was just kind of prompting through a few different book projects that I had that I was able to publish and speaking engagements. And so I started this website about 2 years ago to try to help some younger youth workers to start with some things that I wish that I knew, and to help maybe some theology nerds who have graduated from seminary, who are doing youth ministry now and who want to teach theologically, but it can take a lot of time to learn how to translate what you learned in the classroom into the youth room, so that when you're teaching annoying, obnoxious teenagers whose ADHD meds have worn off, like, how do you talk about the Trinity with those kids? Like, it's difficult. So you have youth workers who love Jesus but aren't theologically trained, who want to talk about discipleship and evangelism, but they're a little bit intimidated because they don't want to teach heresy by accident. And then you have others who are maybe overconfident and are very well educated, but they just need some help learning how do I translate this so that it really helps students, and trying to provide some resources and guidance on those areas. And so started this website, didn't really know what to call it. And then I thought about my Twitter bio. So I don't remember when I joined Twitter. But when I did, I used the word youth pastor theologian to describe myself in my Twitter bio, like probably almost 10 years ago. And then as I was building the website, trying to think about what do I call this thing, it's like, oh, my Twitter bio, that works. And so next thing we know, here we are. Nice.
Wow. Okay. And so over the last couple of years, though, you've kind of felt this calling to youth pastor theologian. You were kind of doing it on the side with this being kind of weekends and evenings, and as well as full-time youth pastor, as well as husband, as well as father,
and
it all starts stacking up for sure, and becoming hard. So you have a friend, or you made a connection with Matt Belfay, is that right?
I did. Joey Molloy leads a great ministry called Implementa up in Canada, the Great White North. That's helping youth workers to just think about youth ministry and how are we doing this, and youth worker training. He had used one of my books, Biblical Theology of Youth Ministry, in his program and in his courses. And so we made a connection, and then he said, hey, I know this guy, Matt, who does this truth snack thing. And he's starting to do this full time. He kind of just did it on the side and is now, fundraising to do this full time. Would you ever think about doing what you're doing full time? I said, yeah, I know. I would like to not go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm in my 40s now. It's really kind of killing me to get 4 hours sleep because I'm doing this thing on top of full-time ministry, and my wife would really appreciate that. So yeah, maybe I'll talk to Matt, and I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but probably not. I don't think it's going to come with it, but I like meeting new people. So sure, I'll talk to your friend Matt. So then I talked to Matt, and he told me a little bit about what he's doing and about how you guys have helped him get launched. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that is something. Yeah. So then I mentioned it to my wife, and she was like, well, we're not getting any younger. So if we're going to do this, then this is the time. So, we talked with you, and she met you guys, and yeah, it just very much seemed along the way like the Lord was just providing some really wonderful blessing and encouragement, because I never really wanted to be that guy who starts his own thing. I always wanted to join my burden and my passion with another like-minded ministry, and not just be an independent renegade. So when you guys offered to come alongside and to strengthen and support, it just meant so much, because I was like, I have no desire to just go and start my own thing. So to have someone helping me and encouraging me along the way to do this, to minister to youth workers, that would be just wonderful.
Yeah. Scott, maybe you can, from Prepared to Answer side, kind of leading up to meeting Mike. And actually, it's a fascinating story. Mike, we met you a year to the date that we had met Matt, actually on the exact date. It was kind of, providential. So, but yeah, maybe Scott, you can kind of backfill the Prepared to Answer side of this story.
Yeah, well, from our side of the story, it's another chapter in this interesting journey that the Lord's put us on. I don't want to take a lot of time to go into Prepared to Answer story, but only in that, like Mike, like Matt, we have sensed this need for, especially for the emerging generation, the next generation of Christians in a post-Christian culture, that there's a need for a kind of ministry that to help equip and help students engage their faith in the culture we find ourselves in. That's our story, and we have our own particular angle on meeting that need. But of course, 10 years in, and we're kind of thinking, okay, Lord, what's next? And that's when, I think it's a couple of years ago, Sean, that you and I began talking about, what does this look like? And are we just going to try and make Prepared to Answer bigger by adding staff? Or what's the Lord leading us to do, when he really laid on our hearts and minds this vision for, I guess you could almost describe it as just self-replicating. Rather than making Prepared to Answer bigger, he's allowed us a mission field and an audience. We're Canadian, of course. Through the internet, we're having influence around the world, but we really do serve a region and a body of a community of churches, and that's our mission field. And we want to try and reach more people through online and all of the rest. But now we're discovering that there are other people like us, and that's how God just kind of suddenly brought Matt, to our doorstep. We found this, here's another, minister like us who's got this vision for meeting a need for the next generation. For Matt, it was, from his own experience of helping Christians, younger Christians, deal with real faith doubt questions and how to move through that. And that's, you can go back and watch our interview with Matt a couple of years ago when we first started with him to get that whole story. But that was just a real God thing. But part of this is just our continual, Lord, what's next? And can you just, he gave us such a great experience with Matt that we said, all right, Lord, would you bring the next Matt along? But we have no idea where to look or how to go about do we put an ad in the paper? Or what do we do? Right. We didn't think that would be a good strategy, but right. And so that was then, in conversation with Matt, I think that was how it happened, is Matt got connected with Mike and said, hey, I've met a guy who I think might be a good candidate for, prepared to answer's next. We're using the word mobilization or mobilize, or however you want to put it, but helping to mobilize ministries whose missions, there's a complement. Your mission is not the same as ours, but it's addressing the same need.
Yeah.
The need of the next generation in a post-Christian culture. And so there's this happy kind of harmony in terms of our missions, but we're also delighted because your focus is different. And we love the mission that Youth Pastor Theologian is focused on for, equipping youth ministers. And what's cool also is, we've met Mike and we've been engaging, and for the last year, we've kind of been talking and making plans, and we're looking forward to now getting you launched. But even in that time, in our own circle up here in Canada, of course, just because of the connections we have, we've been mentioning Youth Pastor Theologian, and now we see, on your Facebook feed, we see people we know, youth pastors and youth leaders, who are now connecting with Youth Pastor Theologian.
Yeah.
So it's just this, it's just this happy kind of, I guess, network or community that the Lord seems to be building. And we're just thrilled to be a part of that, to take what God's given us and use it to further the kingdom by mobilizing great ministries like Truth Snack, Youth Pastor Theologian. And we're looking forward to, what the next would be. That's kind of from our side of things. And that's kind of in a nutshell, how we got into where we are today.
Yeah. And it's amazing how the Lord's work, like Scott said, we didn't put out an advertisement. We haven't advertised this at all. And we're kind of looking for a certain person to do this. And so Matt, he was perfect for what we were looking for. Someone who had a passion, had his own brand, for lack of a better word, but had a real passion for this ministry. We're like, wow, Lord, we're not going to find someone else like that, but thanks. And then along comes Mike, and we're like, wow, right? Like, here's another worker, pastoral background, same as Scott, same as Matt, a passion for reaching the next generation. Yeah, so we're really excited, Mike, that you have this ministry that the Lord has laid on your heart. So maybe we can share kind of where you're at now. I know you were down in a conference in January. What's coming up for Youth Pastor Theologian Ministry, both on the support raising side and then also on ministry side?
Yeah. So, first, just the heart behind Youth Pastor Theologian is that YPT is here to help youth workers think biblically about what youth ministry is, and to help them teach theologically with confidence. Because if we want to make lifelong disciples, not just teenage disciples, but if we want to make lifelong disciples of the next generation, and we're not having theological conversations, then what do we really expect to happen? Right? We want to give students a faith that's big enough for them to grow into, not a teenage-sized faith that they're going to grow out of. And a doctrinal foundation is absolutely essential to that. We need to be talking about the big questions that you guys do so well also. And this is why I think this really is just a really good synergy and partnership and collaboration of the same vision, but different approaches. Right. So whether or not you talk about that as apologetics or as theological instruction, it's kind of two sides of the same coin in a way. And I really appreciate that about the way you approach apologetics ministry. And I think that's a lot of why our ministries have really just been like, oh, you too, me too. Yes. Yeah. Hey, this really works. Because I really want to help youth workers think biblically about what does it mean to be a youth pastor? What does it mean to have a youth ministry? What should be happening in youth group? Maybe what should not be happening at youth group? And to draw biblical lines, not just, well, I don't like that, so we're not going to do that. Or I do like this, so we're going to do this. Or this seems to work, so it's pragmatic. Or, so it's like, that means it, in some ways, there's going to be fewer lines about what we must do and must not do, but those lines are firmer, are more clearly and crisply defined, because we're drawing along the lines of what is youth ministry, not just how should we be doing youth ministry. So to think biblically about what youth ministry is, and then to be training youth workers to be theologically grounded in how they evangelize and how they disciple. That really is the twofold focus of what we're trying to do with Youth Pastor Theologian. So,
Okay.
A question for you, Mike. As you talk about that, I mean, as you're speaking, I'm nodding my head and I'm just thinking, yeah, I mean, that our missions are they just complement one another. We want to teach Christians. We want to help Christians to think biblically about all of life. That's the language of our mission. We want to teach believers to think like Jesus. And your mission is really to equip those who are influencing young people at the level of church ministry to do that, and that's exciting. Here would be from your experience, from your standpoint. I'd be interested to know, what do you see as maybe some of the chief barriers you want to help youth ministers, youth pastors do youth ministry theologically. So you must have in your mind a destination.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the major barriers of getting youth workers, youth pastors from maybe where there isn't a firm theological grounding for youth ministry to where you would envision them getting?
That's a hard question. And the way I answer it today will probably be different.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say, right today, how would you answer that today? What do you see right now?
A few things. I think that there is more good youth ministry happening than we realize. If you just listen to social media, there's a lot of hand wringing and complaining and tweeting out about this stupid youth pastor did this thing, or that person said that heretical thing, right? Because that's what goes viral nowadays. But just simple, faithful youth workers aren't really calling attention to themselves because they're simple, faithful youth workers. And that's not what they're trying to do. But by leading YPT, publishing just regular articles, hosting a podcast, creating a Facebook group, with these types of things, I've been meeting more and more youth workers who are that type of youth pastor. And I just really want to encourage them that they're not alone. I want to help them to have meaningful conversations with their students. I think one of the things that really needs to happen is to help youth workers have meaningful conversations with the parents in their ministry about what youth ministry is, because a lot of times parents come to church because they went to youth group as teenagers, and now they have kids and they want their kids to experience the same thing that the parents experienced as a teen. And then they have a youth pastor who's trying to teach about the Trinity or about the exclusivity of Christ or something, and thinking, well, I want Chubby Bunny. Right. I want more games. It's got to be more fun. It's got to be fun. Like where's all the silliness? You're too serious. It's like school. And then the youth worker and the parent are now in conflict. And it's like, yeah, like I get that you had a great experience in youth group, but how many kids that you went to youth group, like talking to the parents, right? How many kids that you went to youth group with are still active members of the church? Oh, barely any. I think I might be the only one. Okay, so why do we want to replicate that?
Yeah.
Right. So let's have a conversation about what we're trying to do, and let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's not make unfair caricatures of 90s, 80s, whatever youth ministry. But let's help youth workers have meaningful, calm and biblical conversations about what youth ministry is, both with the parents in their ministry, with maybe even the lead pastor, the elder board, the diaconate, whoever, right, is the governing authority over them in the church. Like, how do we help equip youth workers to be able to speak articulately, not harshly, and not defensively, but just to speak confidently and biblically about what they're trying to accomplish as a youth pastor and about their role as someone who comes alongside the church body and the parents to co-disciple the next generation alongside the parents and alongside the church family, rather than seeing youth group as the place where student ministry happens, period, full stop. It's not. Youth ministry is the bridge, not the destination of discipleship, connecting students into the local church and into their families so they can grow their faith there, so it'll sustain beyond their teen years. So
you know what, that's great, Mike. And you know what, good for youth pastors to hear just exactly what you're saying. And so what we love about your ministry too is you've been working on it, like you had said, kind of on weekends and on, nights and those types of things. So you have a lot of material. You have an audience already. Maybe you can talk to, you mentioned Facebook. Where else could youth pastors find your material or your resources?
Yeah, youthpastortheologian.com really is the primary place to go. So we post a fresh article every week, and we have a weekly Friday review on Fridays. So 2 articles each week, one that's an original content article, one that's a collection of articles from across the internet that we compile for youth workers on a variety of areas. We have a podcast that we publish every Tuesday, and we have a Facebook group. So one of the unique things about the Facebook group is that we have membership questions that people need to agree to before they can enter. We've all been part of Facebook groups, and then you ask a question and you're thinking, what sort of answer to that question? Like, are you even a Christian? So
That's right.
There are core questions, just about, do you agree with the Apostles' Creed and the foundational things of, the foundational creeds of the church? Do you believe in biblical inerrancy? That the Scripture is the authoritative, inspired Word of God.
Sure.
And Mike, when you say we, you're saying we often. There are other voices that are speaking through Youth Pastor Theologian. Is that right?
Oh yeah. So it's not it's not MikeMcGarry.com for a reason. Right. I very much want to provide space for other youth workers to write, to contribute, to serve and encourage one another. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That my goal is for eventually for me to only be writing just a portion of the articles and content that's coming out. And so even just in the last, since that conference I went to in Chattanooga that you guys mentioned, I now have like 12 articles from other writers that are in queue, and that's overwhelming when you only do one a week and you're still leading this on top of your full-time youth ministry. And I was like, oh guys, like, thank you for sending this in, but it's gonna be a while, so please be patient. I love giving space to these other youth workers and helping them to think clearly. And the editing, I view the editing process as part of my ministry to the writers, to not just blast them and to not just say, I wouldn't say it that way. This is kind of sloppy writing, but I don't want to lose a writer. So how do I work with the writers to say, hey, like, I think you need to think a little bit more clearly about this, or what about this thing here, or I think you could say this better. Could you explain this or that? Right. That part of the writing, it's not just about writing, but how are we articulating what we're saying? Right. So
I think that's a cool part of your ministry, and then you touched on it earlier, is that you're not just producing content, you're also creating like a network and a community.
Yeah.
Because as you addressed when I asked earlier, one of the challenges in youth ministry is feeling like you're all by yourself.
Yeah.
But you're really in bringing other voices in. You're really developing a community or network of of colleagues really, who are passionate about bringing sound theology into youth ministry.
Yeah. And one of the really exciting things that's come about just recently even is there's a church not too far from me. They have a large, like, old mansion that they were able to purchase, and that's where they meet for their church. So they meet in one part of the building, and the other part of the building is office space that they rent out, and that's part of how they pay for it. There's a large section of the building that they are not able to rent out because for various reasons, right? And so they've offered that space to me for Youth Pastor Theologian to operate out of. And one of their conditions is to use it as a gathering space for youth workers to be together for community and fellowship and ministry. So yeah, we're just praying through different ways to use that space. And I have a few different ideas that I want to bounce off you when we're not recording. But yeah, I'm just really excited about, like, how do we provide space for small groups of youth workers to just get together and to be together, to share fellowship. And I'm really excited, not just about writing and nerding out and doing podcasts and being on social media all day, but just the real development of youth workers and encouraging those who are really discouraged and helping those who are new to start on a strong footing, or someone who's kind of a veteran but rethinking, I just feel like I'm missing something. I think I need to make some adjustments in my ministry, but I'm so far down the road. I need someone else to come in here and help me see what I'm not seeing, because I can tell something's not quite right. So how do we help each other with that? So I'm really excited about Youth Pastor Theologian and what the Lord's going to do here.
Yeah. And Mike, you know what, for our listeners, they've got to hear that excitement coming from you. We hear it. We've been hearing it for the last 6 months, and we feel like, you know what, Mike needs to be released full time to do this, right?
I can't wait to see what God's going to do. Once you're released to put all your energy into it, this is thrilling.
It is. It's exciting, and it's exciting to hear of others coming alongside you, offering you this space, seeing this vision for Youth Pastor Theologian. So others, not just us at Prepared to Answer, but others are seeing it. We know your church is supportive of you, which is an answer to prayer, which we're excited about. So in a few weeks, you're going to start raising your funds, raising partners for this ministry, which we're excited about. So for Prepared to Answer and for Youth Pastor Theologian, you'll be hearing more about that, how you can partner with Mike in doing that. We have it set up already on your website. If people are looking to partner with you, they can go to your website, youthpastortheologian.com. There's an easy way to donate to do that. So,
and Sean, I would just add to that too. What I think is cool, and I'm hoping we can communicate this, and I hope a lot of our own, like our Prepared to Answer ministry partners, those who give to allow our ministry to happen, are seeing this is how God's multiplying your kingdom investment. Yes. Right? It's only because of the partners that God's given to us who've resourced our ministry, and then allowing us to now move beyond, our own boundaries. But that's because God's people are led to give. And I just hope that people are encouraged. Our supporters are encouraged by that. Because God's using their gifts, and we always want to make sure we thank the people who make our ministry possible, and now making other ministries possible. It's just God's adding His blessing to the gifts that are given.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Mike. We're going to have you on again. I know we're going to try to do an episode with Matt and Mike and the two of us. We're just going to talk about the mobilizing aspect of our ministries, and we're excited to get all of us together. And there's going to be other episodes as we can discuss about other issues that we can collaborate on. And we will put links to Youth Pastor Theologian and Prepared to Answer in this episode. I encourage you to like and subscribe, not only Prepared to Answer, but join Mike and his podcasts and youthpastortheologian.com. And until next time, God bless.